leaders. I'm your coach, Adam. Here to have an honest talk about leadership, the obstacles you might face, and how to refine your leadership skills to help you become the leader I know you are. So let's grab a drink, sit back, relax, and have a chat. Today I'm joined by Hector, an executive and leadership coach who specializes in working with leaders and entrepreneurs in the tech field. With over 20 years of personal experience in the tech industry, working in both the public and private sectors, Hector uses his experience and insights to help leaders and entrepreneurs better manage their teams, overcome their challenges, and develop their careers. Welcome to the podcast, Hector.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming in. I know that you're an executive coach. I want to hear a little bit more about that. What is an executive coach?
So with executive coaching, it's a particular niche of coaching where I work with people who are usually in the corporate field of things. They are directors or, maybe in the C-suite, like CEOs, CIOs. When it comes down to it, they're in some sort of management position. And with these people, they have their own unique set of challenges when it comes to running their business or their departments or their teams. And as an executive coach, I help them, again, be able to deal with people effectively, to create and manage high performing teams, to help them overcome challenges they face in their day to day, whether projects or tasks or challenges. So as a coach, I help them kind of explore these topics, uh, determine how they feel, what they think, and we come up with like an action plan, right, to help them overcome and be able to basically perform better in the future.
So it's working primarily with executives and management.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say management, what levels of management do you work with? Are you working strictly with those CEOs at the top, upper management, or?
I actually work with, I'll say, a wide range of people in the management or leadership field. With management, we have it can be someone that could be a team lead, or a simple supervisor, up to maybe a business owner, CEO. So it runs the entire gamut, right? When it comes down to it, they need to help their organization, their business. They need to manage people, need to deal with customers. Very similar things that they do, just in different varying scopes.
Okay, so as long as they just need help managing a team or just want to go to that next level, I mean, you're their guy.
Yeah, so that's I'm the guy they'll come looking for help from.
And so what made you want to get into executive and leadership coaching?
So I have experience in the management and leadership uh, position as well. So, my background is technology. And, I started off as a software developer, but eventually I worked my way up to management roles. And in those management roles, you're not taught those skills. You're not sent to a school or some course. It's just like, hey, here you go, get managing. Right? If you're lucky, maybe you get to go to a course, but as someone new, you're thrown into the fire. And what I found with the majority of people who enter their first management role, they get into it because of what they've done in the past, right? Not because of their management or leadership skills that they possess at the present moment. So I always give the example, um, if I'm a good salesman and I get promoted to become a manager, because I'm being good at sales doesn't mean I'm good at being a manager, right? So in my own personal story, when I first started managing, wow, I wish I had some help. There were a lot of challenges that I had to face where I experienced a lot of failure, learned trial by fire, and it was just a self-learning process. And I really wish that I had someone I can go to. So as a manager, you also coach your staff, right? So as a coach, you're helping them overcome their challenges in their roles, right? Helping them with their career. I always tell my staff that, one of my primary duties is to help build your experience and skills so that you put yourself in a better position to find that next job. Like, I don't want you to leave, but I want to prepare you, right? So at least your resume is excellent, right? So as a coach, right, you're doing all these things for your team members. And as I went through my management career, I found that coaching had an impact on both myself and for the people I coached, and I really enjoyed that. I felt that it was a way for me to contribute to society, right? This is my calling to help people, and by through coaching, I can. I think that the term, pay it forward always comes. If I can help someone and put them in a better position, make them happier, make them more successful, somehow, some way, they're going to pass it on to someone else, and so on and so forth. That's how I see coaching, and I really want to see that happening, like in the world. So, because I am familiar with that management, executive leadership space, and me wanting to do this for the world, I found that coaching was the best way to do it, and then that's how I entered this field.
I absolutely love that. That idea that by you helping out your team and providing that coaching, they go on to help out those around them. And that as a coach, you've recognized that there's a lot of leaders out there that just literally don't have the training. It's mind blowing how many people just get into a leadership position and they just don't have the training.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you from my own personal experience in the medical industry, I would encounter so many people that got into a leadership position just because they had a degree and they had no leadership training whatsoever. And I would just watch them just personally gut the entire organization. It's just so bizarre.
It's funny how people think based on your past accomplishments that if they put you in a new role, that they think you'll be just as successful. Right? Just because, again, you're a great salesman doesn't mean you're a great leader or a great manager. You're a great salesman, and you don't possess all the skills or the knowledge for you to become that great manager or great leader. And that's what people um, don't realize.
Right? It's just so bizarre. And so I have a question for you because I've often thought about this quite a bit in regards with just promoting people into a leadership position that really have no business being into a leadership position. Why do you think that's like the norm these days?
I think it comes back to the same thing I just been saying about people thinking just because they're a very high performer, they're getting great results in their previous role, the same thing's going to happen in this new role, that it's going to transfer, one for one, which is not always the case, right? Like anything, it takes time, right? You need to learn um, in order to be successful at whatever you do. So when people get promoted, um, this is their train of thought. Oh, Hector is very good salesman, right? It must mean he'll be a very good manager, right? Which is a false belief. Right? But again, most people don't know that, right?
And then, of course, the person that got promoted to that leadership position ends up just floundering at it and nothing good happens.
Yeah, that's correct. When you're promoting someone, it should be actually like a two-way conversation. It's not just you promoting someone. It's actually, does this person even want to be promoted?
That's interesting. Do they even want to be promoted?
hmm Because there's people that are happy, being that salesman. That's where they get their joy from. And if you move them into that leadership role and they do something that they're not going to enjoy, how do you think they're going to perform? Right? If they're not happy, if it's not something they want to do, like how do you think they're going to perform? Probably not well. So a promotion should be actually a two-way conversation. Right? It's not just a matter of someone sending them from one position to another. Again, there's a lot of like factors that need to be taken into consideration.
It's so interesting that you say that there are factors to be taken in consideration, and it's not a one-way conversation because most people have this weird idea that being promoted into a leadership and management role is actually a reward. You get a fancy new paycheck. Everyone should be happy about this.
Exactly. Like I would say, human beings are unique. Just because someone likes one thing doesn't mean another person likes it. So yeah, the person doing the promoting may think it's a reward, but if you don't ask that other person, it could be seen as a punishment. Right? Again, you need to have that conversation to understand. Right? And this is where um, being direct, being transparent, having that empathy, right? Having all these skills and behaviors can help you determine, is this the right decision I'm making to promote, John to a manager? Or maybe it should be Sarah, right? If you don't put in the efforts, you'll never know, right? And you have to put in the efforts.
and just have that conversation, figure that out. And so when a lot of leaders are looking at potential employees or just individuals in their organization, they're looking to promote somebody into more of that leadership role. What should they be looking at if not, the fact that, hey, Hector, you're a great salesman. You know what you need? To be promoted.
So as a manager or a leader, you have to know the the strengths and weaknesses of your team. I'm assuming you're promoting from within your own team, right? That's how I'm speaking to it. And so you got to know your strengths and weaknesses. You got to know their personalities, their likes and dislikes. You got to know them as a person. You got to know them as a human being, right? Why? Because you need to understand if they're the right fit for that management or leadership role. Right? It's not just a matter of like randomly selecting a person. You want to find the best fit so that not only do they be able to contribute to your team and to the organization, that they're also successful in their own career, successful in their own role. So you want to make sure that, again, doing that due diligence, like putting in the efforts, right? And really understanding the team members that you are wanting to promote.
And I think you pointed this out a couple of times in our conversation, and it's this idea of helping individuals with their own career. It's not just like this one-way street where it's like you're getting promoted and I'll pay you extra money and you're going to do all this extra job. But instead it's kind of more of a dialogue or a conversation, it sounds like, where not only are they doing more, but you're helping them get to where they want to go.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Putting someone in a management position, like you said, like some people see it as a reward. But again, everybody has unique wants and likes, right? And if you don't have that conversation, you'll never understand what those are. In order to put the most effective person into that position, right, you got to find that right mix of skills, experience, the desire, the motivation. These people aren't commodities, right? Again, they are human beings, right? Each is a unique individual, so that you need to be able to find that right person by having the conversation.
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about conversations. Because again, people are not commodities, they're actual people. And so, how do you have that conversation, especially around what you as a business or as a leader can do for them?
When it comes down to it, the first way to start is, everything starts with yourself. So when it comes to having conversations, being open, transparent, honest, do you display those characteristics? Do you have good relationships with your customers, with your team, with your staff? Are you open? Are you transparent? Right? If you want people to behave a certain way, it starts with you. You set the example, especially when you're in a leadership role. Being in that role automatically conveys the principle of you being a role model. Right? You may not want to be, but I'm sorry, you will be because you're in that position. It's by default. It's fortunate or unfortunate based on your perspective. So how you behave, how you act, what you say, what you do, people will follow your example. It's like children, right? They see what their parents do, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to replicate the same behaviors. And so when you're in a leadership position, you got to remember that people are going to follow what you do. Right? So in order to have those conversations, you have to display those qualities of being honest, transparent, being vulnerable. And it also comes down to having a relationship with your staff, right? When you have a conversation, like when you meet a stranger, you don't go like, straight to the deep emotional topics. Like maybe you do, but generally people don't, right? In order to have that strong conversation with your staff, you got to have a strong relationship with them. Right? And what that means is you got to understand them as a human being. Right? You got to have the empathy to be understand how they think, how they feel, so you can have that stronger relationship, right? And what all this leads to is having that culture develop around your team of having these relationships, being able to have these types of conversations, displaying or utilizing the behaviors that contribute to this, I'll call it like this positive culture, right? So if all these things are in place, then having a conversation is actually easy, right? If you basically prepare, you set yourself up for success when having these types of conversation on any topic, that is.
When you talk about it, you talk about it with such confidence. And I applaud you for that because I've worked with a number of leaders who are actually quite scared of building that relationship and getting to know their team. And they're very hesitant to sit down and actually just kind of get to know them. So for those individuals that are kind of petrified for their team, how do you get over that? How do you get over that hump?
So here's a general piece of advice for these people and for life. You gotta be comfortable being uncomfortable. Right? Nothing good happens without putting in effort or work. Right? So when it comes to being more confident to speaking with people, like you got to do some like internal like digging here. Like, why is it that you're afraid? What is it that you're worried about? Is it, what you think people may how people may perceive you, right? Maybe you're afraid of saying something that can cause them to be angry or sad or basically in some state that you don't want them to be in, right? What is it? You got to figure that out on yourself, right? Everybody's situation is different, right? But as a leader, you got to understand that your responsibility is not to yourself. It's not to the organization. It's to the people you lead and you manage. That's who you need to put as number one in your priorities. And that's how I've led and managed my career. And I found great success with that, right? When you give people the freedom and the space, the authority to act and do whatever they need to do in order to do their job well, they respect you for that. They trust you, right? And when that happens, the performance increases. Things get done on time. Like everybody's happy. Everybody's motivated. Um, everybody's in a good mood, right? Everybody's happy, right? And so as a leader, you have to look out for the well-being of your team. So when you do that, I think that confidence comes naturally, right? Like it's like a group of friends, right? You're going to be comfortable. You're going to feel like you can say things openly, right? Without being judged, right? It doesn't matter what they think because with your friends, you're comfortable, right? At the end of the day, whatever you do, whatever you say, you're still friends. So that's how I feel as a leader with your team. You got to have that type of close relationship with them, right? Or at least try to, right? Because again, as a leader, your job is to your people.
And I love that you point that out because so many people, when they first get into a leadership position, come with this attitude of my responsibility is to the person above me and to myself. But that's not true. Your responsibility is the people that you're working with and that you're leading. And one of those responsibilities is actually to protect them from a lot of shit, especially when it's coming from uphill, coming down, and you're like, oh, that's not quite good.
Yeah. So I've had one of my old bosses say, Hector, your role is to be the bulletproof shield. Okay. You're there to protect your team, right? And you have to take the bullets. And with some of my old jobs, with some of the good manners I've had in my life, I've had the same experience. The good ones protected me and my team. That they shielded us from like the garbage, I'll call it, right? The attacks, right? Um, he would or she would protect us from all of that. And because of that, we trusted him. We felt safe and we could focus on our jobs. And I knew I could trust my manager because I knew they would help me in any way possible. Right? And so when it comes to me being in that role or me as a coach, right, that's the type of a behavior attitude that I want to demonstrate that I would like people to demonstrate as well. Because again, right, you got to look after the people and part of the job is being that bulletproof shield.
And so, for those that are just getting into leadership, how do you be that bulletproof shield? How do you protect those below you from the shit that's coming downhill, literally?
So, I would ask these people, when it comes down to it, who actually does the work? You, the manager, or your staff? I'm going to bet 9 times out of 10, they're going to say the staff. The staff actually does the work, right? They possess the knowledge. They possess the skills. Your job is to help guide, to help facilitate, right? To help protect, right? In order to get the job done, you need your team to be able to do that job. And what does that mean, right? They need to have all the resources on hand, right? They need to be motivated. They need to be supported. They need to be protected, right? So as a manager, again, when you get into that leadership or management role, the focus has to switch away from yourself to your team, right? Success is not about your own personal success. Rather, it's the success of your team, right? So you have to refocus, right? It's not about you anymore. It's about your team. It's about these other people. They are your priority. And admittedly, I tend to do things the hard way. Um, there were situations where I would sacrifice myself, right? My reputation, potentially my career, or to help support my team, to protect them, because that's how strongly I felt about this. And I'll say that uh, I never regretted any of those actions I took, because in the end, everybody was successful.
Well, and leadership is a very thankless job because really, when you're doing a good job, you don't really get any rewards or pat on the backs. It's the people below you that get all the credit and all the fame and all the fortune of all their hard work, but you get all the blame when things don't work. But when you're doing a good job, nobody says, "Hey, you're doing an amazing job."
Yeah, exactly. If you're in it for glory, that's probably not the role you want to take.
Which, again, kind of brings it back to individuals that get promoted based on, hey, you're a great salesman. We're going to give you better income. You're going to get all this status, all this pride. But that's not the case. It's a case of you're getting into it because you want to help people and you want to help those below you.
Yeah, so I think people need to shift their beliefs about what being promoted to a leadership position means. Like they can't think of it as a reward, right? It's actually giving someone a different set of responsibilities, right? And you have to find out, are they the right fit? Do they even want it? Right? Leadership is a heavy, heavy responsibility, right? And can those people undertake that? And so again, there's a lot of factors a person needs to make if you're going to promote someone into that type of position.
Mhm. And so, kind of moving into the reward aspect of it, if leadership is not a reward, then how do you reward those within your organization for doing a good job?
So again, it's when it comes to organization, what is the culture built around it? Is it money driven, right? That we're going to pay high salaries to attract people to keep them. Yeah, there's companies like that. There's people that want money. But again, not everybody is driven by money, right? Maybe some people are looking for a work-life balance that, they work their 7 or 8 hours at the end of the day. They can check out and not think about work and be able to spend time with their family, right? Or maybe the organization offers opportunities like special training, um, different experiences, opportunities for advancement. Yeah, like that type of culture that organization establishes can help, like with this uh, this question you had about rewards, right? Reward isn't always about financial, right? And like with how the organization dictates their culture can dictate how like the lower level leaders and managers facilitate those, my air quotes rewards to your staff, right? If it's about gaining new skills and experience, you as the manager, helps facilitate that by giving your staff the opportunities to gain these new skills and experiences. Is it putting them on different types of projects, approving courses that they sign up for, encouraging to read and do research? Like what is it, right? So that's, as a manager, you're going to have to help execute, right, on that.
Well, this kind of reminds me of my own leaders in the past who've, to reward me, have often said, "Oh, Adam, you're doing such a good job. Thank you." And they would always say thank you, and I never felt rewarded in any way, shape, or form. I was like, okay, thanks are cheap. And then I had one of them come up to me and they're like, "Hey, you did a really good job." And they gave me a can of Dr. Pepper. I was like, yeah, I did a good job. I'm going to keep doing a good job. And it harkens back to this idea that rewards don't have to be monetary. They don't have to be huge sums of money. Sometimes it's even a simple thing.
Yeah. And it's even better if you know, again, what motivates, what drives each individual. Like you love Dr. Pepper. I like Coca-Cola, right?
Oh,
But
we can't be friends anymore, Hector. I'm sorry. This podcast's over.
but it just is an example of, we like different things, right? But we can't be treated the same way when it comes to being thanked or rewarded that way.
And it comes back to that conversation. You just have to get to know your people. You have to talk with them.
Exactly.
And just to kind of come back to a point that we had chit-chatted about, it was creating that self-awareness inside of yourself. Uh, really pushing yourself into this understanding of like, why do you want to be a leader? What's going on in terms of you that's stopping you from talking with your team, and creating a lot of that self-awareness to have these bigger conversations, to have that conversation about how do these people like being rewarded? How do I protect my team? How do I get to know them and figure out who should be promoted to a management level and who doesn't want that? So to kind of come down to it, how does one even start building up self-awareness?
I think the first step is to kind of acknowledge that you need to be self-aware, right? Once you acknowledge that you need to be self-aware, then you got to start like with baby steps, right? So for example, when you do or say something, maybe take a few seconds like, hey, why did I say that? Why did I do that? What motivated me to do that? Um, how did that impact another person? Like, did it achieve the goal that I wanted to set out to do? So basically you're asking yourself these questions, right? That's like the first step. The second step, you start incorporating other people's opinions, right? So I talk about blind spots a lot, right? So blind spot is basically something that you need improvement on or some weakness you may have, but you're not aware of it. Hence the blind spot. This is where you need other people to help observe, to help watch, to help pay attention. And hopefully these people are like trusted individuals in your inner circle, because you want some very honest, transparent feedback. Like, for example, Hector, whenever you speak to someone, you always have a frown on your face. I may not have been aware of that. Maybe it's just like something I do naturally. But if someone told me that, hey, if I frown all the time, I'm conveying the wrong emotions or message to that other person. So maybe I should change like how my facial features when I talk to someone. Maybe I should start smiling more often. So I wouldn't know that unless I walk around with a mirror or if someone told me, right? So to review, right, you need to start acknowledging that you need to be self-aware. Number two, you gotta start asking yourself those questions. And number three, you gotta help yourself by asking trusted individuals to provide you that feedback, their opinions, even their tips and recommendations to address the blind spots you may have.
Well, and to dig a little bit deeper into that, you said to get feedback from trusted individuals. And the trusted individual portion is very important, because my next question would be, in regard with feedback, how do you determine what's good feedback and what's bad feedback to work on?
Yeah, so this is where you start with yourself. Like with any feedback you receive, you cannot take it personally or get emotion about it, right? However it may be conveyed to you. You have to believe that the feedback that you're getting is coming from a good place from the other person. Assume it is positive, that they do want to help you. Hence, my recommendation, it should come from a trusted individual. It could be a friend or a colleague or a family member, right? Whether or not it's good or bad feedback, well, you need to experiment, right? Uh, just because you're told something, you can't take it. as 100% fact, right? So using that example of changing my facial expressions, like that I should smile. Hey, I'll go smile, whenever I talk to someone. If I'm finding success with it, hey, that was a great piece of feedback that I got. But if it's not, it's like, okay, maybe it's related to facial expressions. Maybe I should, instead of smiling, maybe I should have like a neutral expression, right? So this is where you have to start experimenting, right? And you test that feedback. If it works, great. If not, get some more feedback, or you try to figure some things out more on your own end as well.
So just real that trial and error point and figuring out what's working and what's not.
Exactly, right? Um, People want to help you, right? But they won't always give you feedback that may work for you.
Well, this reminds me of I was called into a management office ages ago, and I got sat down with my manager, and my manager said to me, she said, Adam, you're not very confident in talking with individuals, and you're a very quiet person. I would love to see you start chit-chatting and reaching out and making more connections with the team. The honest to goodness truth was the work environment I absolutely hated. And I was actually looking for a new job at the time. So it was one of those things of, it was feedback, yes, but it was so off the mark about what was actually going on. It kind of blew my mind. So I was like, thank you for the feedback. I'll think on that.
Yeah, so I think in this example, coming back to knowing your team, right? If this manager and you had this trusted relationship, you might have told her that you're looking. You know, in some of my management roles, my staff trusted me enough to let me know that they were looking for a new job, right? For usually extenuating circumstances, or you know um, there's like family concerns that they need to address. They need to move to another part of the country. They trusted me enough to tell me that, so that I can prepare for when they leave, because I would have to hire new staff and would need to knowledge transfer everything from them to the rest of the team or to this new individual, right? So they were looking out for my interests as well, and they trusted me enough to tell me that, right? So this is where that, again, where that relationship building and having those conversations, having that culture, can really help a leader out.
But you pointed out something very interesting, and it was this idea that by trusting your employees or helping your employees or your people that are following you, they start looking out for you just as you look out for them. It's this very interesting circular relationship that you start to build, and it's very much a two-way street.
Yes, a relationship always has to be a two-way street, a good relationship, that is. And again, I use the example like a circle of friends, right? Um, Friends trust each other, right? Friends talk openly with each other. Right? That friends will do anything for each other, right? When it comes to that leader report relationship, right? You don't have to be like close, tight buddies, but having that level of trust, having that level of safety when you're around each other, right? It helps build this kind of this two-way relationship that benefits both sides, right? That I trust you to tell you that I'm going to quit my job, or I trust you that I give you like a hard task and that you're going to accomplish it, right? As more and more of these interactions take place, right? That trust, that safety just goes stronger and stronger. And when that happens, the team grows stronger and stronger, and it only benefits everyone.
And then you're off to the races. And so, how do you build that trust within your team? Because many leaders struggle with it.
So this is where you gotta use like baby steps, like an incremental plan, I'll call it. Trust always starts with the little things, right? So when you say that I'm gonna show up to a meeting on time at 3 p.m. and you show up at 3:05, the way I would see it is, well, did you just lie to me? How can I trust you to show up on time to the next meeting? You promised to call someone at a certain time on a certain date, and you don't, or you're late. Again, that's an example of demonstrating trust, right? Either you did it or you didn't. If you didn't, you don't build that trust. If you did, you built the trust. So you start off with these little actions, right? Over time, right, these actions can get bigger, right? Like, Adam, I'm going to assign you this project. Um, I trust that, you can finish it within 1 week. And if you need help, you'll come to me. And I'm not going to micromanage you or hover over your shoulder because, I trust you. And if Adam, does it successfully, great. Those bonds of trust have increased. Even if Adam failed, those bonds of trust can still be strong because it's treated as a learning opportunity instead of, accusing or judging him.
Well, tell me a little bit more about building trust in failure, because for a lot of people, this notion of failure and being a good thing in general is doesn't correlate with one another. But you're saying that even in failure, you can still build trust, which could then benefit the team.
So failure is something that will happen to all of us, right? I always ask, can you please name me one individual who is perfect? And no such living individual exists, right? In reality, that is. So we're all going to fail in some form or another throughout our lives. And we have to accept that. And with failure comes an opportunity for improvement, for learning. Right? So people can approach it in two ways, right? As a manager, if one of your reports fail, are you going to accuse him of failure, judge him for being inadequate or not being skilled or being lazy? Or you can treat it as a learning opportunity, right? That, this person, they did something, they failed, but what can we do to improve next time, right? Let's use this as an opportunity to move forward, right? Yes, you did fail, but next time we're going to be successful together, right? So as that person who did fail, like, how would you respond to each of these situations, right? If someone accused me and judged me, my confidence would be shot, right? I'd be afraid to do anything. But if I had a manager that trusted me and didn't judge me for failing and basically helped me improve, my confidence level would increase. My trust level would increase. And I would actually work even harder to avoid that failure going forward into the future, right? Because this person had faith in me. I want to pay back that belief in me by doing the best that I can, right, in the future. So that's how you can build trust that way through failure.
I love it. I love it. And I know a lot of people having that conversation in regards with failure and helping build that trust, they're very uncomfortable with. How do you even start that conversation about, you know, you fucked up, but this is a learning opportunity where we are going to get better at?
So again, this is where that relationship component comes into the picture, right? You have to speak to that person based on their internal beliefs, their motivations, right? What they're comfortable with, right? How I say one thing to you may not be the exact same way I say to another person in the same situation, right? I also want to touch upon the points where, I talked about being a bulletproof shield. Even though you may see failure as a potentially a positive thing, there's people above you that may not. And this is where that bulletproof shield duty comes in. You have to protect your team from that, right? Unfortunately, you're going to have to take the blows, right? You got to take the bullets, right? To ensure that your team is protected, that they feel safe, so that they trust you, right? So that further down the road that they can perform better, right?
And so, what do you do when somebody's not performing well and they're trying, but it's just not working out?
Yeah. So in this situation, again, you gotta be empathetic and put yourself in their shoes, right? You can't judge, you can't assume because someone may be performing because, they're at home busy dealing with a sick family member and that's why they'll show up too late. to work every day, or that they need to leave early, or maybe their energy levels are low, right? Not only do you have to be empathetic, again, this is where that trust and having those conversations come in, that you have to listen and give them the benefit of the doubt, right? And keep an open mind, right? You have to understand the person's situation, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, right? Because when it comes to dealing with difficult employees, it's not always about the same thing, right? Just because someone performs poorly, right? It may not be what you think it is, right? It could be your fault as well, right? Have you been giving these people guidance, support, feedback in order for them to do a good job, right? You gotta think of it from that perspective as well. That's why there's always multiple factors that play into it. And as a manager or leader, you have to take that into consideration because it's your responsibility, right? You're in this position where you got to make these types of decisions. So you got to make more well-informed decisions, right? By taking into account all these factors. And with difficult employees, you have to understand their situation again, right? Again, what they think, what they feel, in order for you to figure out the best way to deal with them. So using the example of a sick employee, maybe, hey, um, you can show up late to work every day, that's fine. And you could just stay a little later or make up the time over the weekends, right? Find other alternatives, right? Instead of chastising or blaming or arguing with these individuals, right? Try to really figure out what the root cause or of their behavior is that you're perceiving as difficult, right? You may think it's difficult, but is it really difficult? You have to find out.
Well, and it kind of brings back to your original point of the first step is always just to build that relationship with your team, just across the board. And then it's putting that self-awareness of yourself and how you're behaving, how you're acting, and kind of how you're viewing the situation, and then having that dialogue with the individual and getting down to the root of the problem as opposed to chastising or belittling them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you notice I use the word like relationship a lot. That's because I believe it is one of the foundations of being a good and successful leader. You got to have that relationships, right? Again, you can't treat people as commodities. These are unique individuals. They're human beings, and they need to be treated as such. In order to do that, you have to have strong relationships.
Relationships are key because at the end of the day, leadership is a relationship business. Like, that's what you're doing.
Yes, exactly.
And I know with this whole switch to online, some people are online, some people are still offline in regard to the meeting. How do you build that relationship when sometimes people aren't always in the office?
Yeah, so admittedly, it is a lot tougher when you do it virtually versus in person. In person is always the best. With in person, it's more easy for me to see their nonverbal cues, right? How they move or their body, right? It's gestures, like easier to get that tone of voice or those facial expressions. Like even though I could see that on video, there could be things I just don't notice. So when it comes to managing people remotely or virtually, again, it comes down to relationships, right? Are you checking in with the individual, right? Are you just dealing with them on a formal basis? Are you having informal conversations as well? Do you allow people to contact you, like kind of like a open door policy, right? Virtually, like with virtually, you have like not only video, you have like instant messenger, right? Just because I'm in a meeting doesn't mean you can't send me an instant message. And it's like I always tell people, if you contact me, the worst thing that can happen is that I could say no, but I'll try to arrange another time or date to speak with you. That's the worst that can happen, right? Because we know with virtual work these days, I find that I'm even more busy and stuck in meetings more often, and it's actually harder for me to have these casual conversations. But I'll let people contact me, arrange another time or another date, and we'll have them, right? I won't skip them, but I will still have them, right? And I think with managing people virtually, I think some of the I'll say old school managers or the poor performing managers, they're losing that sense of having a visibility or basically micromanaging. Right? Virtually, you can't do that anymore. So they feel lost and they may even become harsher. or more stern when it comes to managing employees. So what I'm telling you is this is where a higher level of trust needs to be built, right? Virtually, like I can't see what you're doing. I'm trusting that you're working, right? For myself, I tell my staff, right, at the end of the day, like I'm going to give you my trust, right? And it's yours to lose. At the end of the day, it's about the deliverable. It's not about you working between certain hours of the day, right? If you can deliver your tasks or your projects on time to a certain level of quality, that's fine. You can do it at midnight for all I care, right? But as long as you can do that and support your team and the organization, you have the flexibility to approach it any way you want, right? So that's how I built trust with my team, right? And I know it's appreciated because I've never had an issue. I always get the deliverables, right? So again, that's where that relationship and trust component plays strongly into this virtual or remote working model.
Well, and something that I think you said multiple things that I feel like we really need to get into, but the first and foremost is you were talking a little bit about responsibility. And for example, you're giving people responsibilities to do, and then you're just trusting that they're going to complete it. And you're literally putting all the responsibility onto them. As opposed to many leaders will take the responsibility and be like, well, I have to make sure that they do the correct job. It's like, no, no, no. This is their job. They have to do it.
So you got to think of it from another perspective, like in terms of building a business. Right? You may have the best idea, the best product, or the best service, but you'll never be successful. You'll never be able to scale unless you have a larger group of individuals helping you out. You can't do everything yourself. I'm sure there's businesses where there's only a one person running it, but majority requires more than one. So in most teams, you need some sort of team or staff to help you out. So with every business, there's going to be a large group of people involved, right? And you're not going to be able to micromanage if you wanted to, right? So there needs to be that, again, that level of trust, right? Giving them that authority to do things on their own, right? Again, this conversation can go very deep, but another factor that plays into it is how do you hire for your team? Are you looking for individuals that can take on the responsibility? Or are you just looking for someone that has two legs, two arms, and a head and that can fill the space in your organization, right? Hiring is, again, another heavy responsibility placed upon leaders and managers, right? You're building a team. This team represents you, the organization. And for myself, I want people that I can trust, that can I build a relationship with, that has a strong work ethic, are high performers, and I need to put in the time and the effort to find these people when I'm trying to hire them. And of course, I'll never be able to find these perfect individuals. I also need to find people with that potential, right? Can these people be trained to do these things, right? That's also what I have to look into as well, right? And there's potential, right? Again, you'll never find that perfect person, but I want to find someone close to, if not someone I can build into that ultimate team member for my organization or for my group.
And so when you're looking at that hiring process, what are you exactly looking for in regards with the person that you want on your team?
Yeah. So there's like the standard interview questions you'll ask, right? What are your greatest strengths, what your weaknesses, all that kind of stuff. But I look at some of the intangibles as well. How do they conduct themselves? Right? Did they walk into the interview with a pair of jeans and a t-shirt or a, shirt and tie? Again, it really depends on the type of business you're running. But for myself, I've been in that corporate environment. I expect someone to come in dressed formally, right? How do they speak? Are their eyes focused on me when they talk to me? Are they darting around? Right? What are their hand movements? So there's all these other things. It's up to my interpretation, right? And again, this is not like based 100% on science, right? But I think I've been around enough people to understand like how certain people act based on certain personalities, right? Their tone of voice. Are they really timid or really confident? Do they talk very rudely or very, joyously. Right? You got to take all these factors into consideration, right? And then, what else you can do? You got to do research, right? People, say bad things about social media and being online, but I treat it as a tool. It's a source of information. So I'll check online, right, on their LinkedIn profile, and I'll try to go on things like Facebook or Instagram, all those other platforms. How does this person conduct themselves in this online world? Because I feel like how you conduct yourself outside work is the same way you would conduct yourself at work, right? It's not like you put on this persona in different situations. But I believe that how you act in every situation is who you are. Right? So again, I will say a lot of factors come into it, and when it comes down to it, an interview process will not be perfect, right? You have to accept that, but you could increase the odds of finding that ideal candidate that you're looking for, but by taking all these factors into consideration, doing your research, putting in the effort, right, and building that team through that hiring process.
Well, and to bring it back to what you said earlier, I mean, hiring is a very imprecise art, but there's failure. There's just going to be failure, and it's just accepting it, learning from it, and then moving on. And sometimes there's nothing to learn. Sometimes it's like, you know what, I hired it and it just didn't work out.
Yeah. So like I said, everyone's going to fail. What separates people who are winners and who also are losers are how they deal with failure, right? Are you going to move forward in a positive manner? Are you going to accept it and, be hard on yourself? Like, what are you going to do? It's how you deal with failure, right? That can help define your success in the future.
I love it. I love it. So we're just coming to the end of our time together. For those that want to reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing or get personalized coaching, how would they go about doing that?
So there's two ways you can find me online. The first is on my website, coachhectorwong.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
And just on LinkedIn, just search up Hector Wong.
Yep, Hector Wong. Um, you'll find that in my title. It'll say executive and leadership coach. So that's how you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in and just doing the podcast. And in regards with our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, give it a like, and share it with a friend. And if you're ready to take the next leap and improve your leadership skills, head over to www.seatingthelead.com and book your free coaching session today.